Hi, so I've just put together a bit of a video showing you about the different ways that you can find the statistics for this assignment about finding the ideal location for people. So what I've done is I've gone through the Gapminder and Better Life Index and looked at the different categories about how you can find the information for those people. What I've done also is in the links below, so in the description below, I've actually put at what time of this video I've actually got each section, so whether it's population or crime or health. So you can actually skip ahead to look at one particular section if you want to. Okay, I'll also put some links to Gapminder and the Better Life Index if you want to access those and know how to get to those easily. And this video and the links and the list of the different topics will be on my website as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do is walk you through some of the ways that you can find the information that you need in order to complete this assignment. So as you can see, I've already got a couple of tabs open. I've got the Gapminder World Graph, which is gapminder.org, and I have the OECD Better Life Index. These are probably going to be the best ones as far as finding statistical information that you're going to need for this assignment. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is how to find the climate. Most of the characters on the list have specified whether they've liked hot environments, temperate environments, cold environments, etc. The easiest way to do that, if we just open up a new tab, is to do a search for climate world map. Now, an image search is probably an even easier way to find that information. So what we're looking for is we're looking for a map that probably only shows maybe 4 or 5 different categories. So we're looking just for a fairly simple map at this stage. So something like this or this one. Let's have a look at this one in a bit more detail. Okay, so we've got our regions here, our polar regions, which are the cold ones, temperate, which are the green, and temperate is for climates like ours in Port Lincoln, where it's not too hot, not too cold, so fairly moderate temperatures. So you'll see those in America, across Europe, Australia, and South America, and down the bottom of South Africa. Then we've got your tropical areas, Mediterranean, which once again are very similar to temperate climates, and mountainous regions. So a map like this has the information that you need to work out which part of the world your person might prefer. So you can already start to narrow it down. Okay, the next thing we're going to look at is looking at population statistics and where we can find information about population. So if we go back to Gapminder, down the bottom here we can look at population. There's actually a tab there, as you can see, called population, and all we really need to know at this stage is our total population. So if we click on that, okay, so it gives us the population. This is 1.2 billion people over here, and down to 200 million. Now, an easy way to look at where the places are is obviously you can click on the dots, but you can see it gets really crowded down here. But if we click on this map tab here, give it a few minutes to move around, it gives us a really easy visualization as to where these populations are. The larger the circle, the larger the population. So if you've got someone who wants to live somewhere with a large population, you can sort of narrow down some of the countries that they might want to live in. Okay, the other thing we can look at with population, and you'll need to go back to the chart one to change that one. With the chart, we can also look at the average age of people. And I think one of the people in the list for the assignment says that they want to hang around with people their own age. I think it was an elderly couple. So by clicking down here, and once again we go to population, we have females by age, males by age. We want a bit of an average, so we go to median age, which is another word for an average. If you're a maths student, you probably know more technically what it means. So here we have the average age for the population. And we have at the top here Japan, average age of 43. Down to Uganda, where the average age is 15. And there's a whole heap of reasons as to why there are no older people in some of those countries. And once again, if we click on the map, if you're not sure where some of those places are, really quick, easy way to find out where people are. And I think in this case it might be the larger the... No, actually I don't know what the dots mean. You might actually be better off using a graph in this one, because I'm not sure whether the maps represent the age. So the bigger the dot, the older the age. I don't think it is, because we have China here in the middle. So you're probably better off in this case looking at the graph to find the average age. So if you've got an older couple looking for a population that is older, then you're probably going to look at these. If you want younger people looking for a similar age, then we're probably looking at this group in the middle here, where they're at between 20 and 30. Okay, we can also look at the sex of the people, so whether they're male or female. Unfortunately, I think we can look up the percentage of males. No. So a lot of the population data about male and females is missing from Gapminder. So there is another way where we can find out how many men and how many women there are in a country. And if we just go to our Google search again, if we do a search for population pyramid, and you'll need to actually enter the name of a place, so we'll do Australia. Once again, we'll do an image search, and you'll come up with a graph like this. So let's have a look. That's 2014. So what this graph shows you, because we haven't done this in class before, along the centre here we have the age groups of the people, so 0 to 4. And along the bottom on this side we have the population in thousands of males and the population in females. So if we can have a quick look here, babies born in 2014. In 2014, between the ages of 0 to 4, we had 656 girls and probably about 600 and maybe 80 boys. So there are actually more boys born in 2014 between the ages of 0 and 4 than what there were girls. So if we look up in the 20 to 24 year olds, we have girls just falling short, so maybe around 800, but if we look at boys, they're almost hitting the 820. So this can give us an indication about countries or places where there are more males or females, and one of the questions specifically asks about the male population wanting to be bigger than the females. So the population pyramids can give you that. Just be conscious of the date that it was done. It doesn't have to be a really recent map, but some of them are quite old. For example, this one here is actually from 1991. So try and find the most recent map that you can. Okay, the next thing that we can look at are the environmental concerns. So there's a couple of ways that we can do that. The Better Life Index, which we haven't used yet, is probably, I'll just reset that, is probably the best one to use for this, and this will give you an overall view about how people view the environment. Now, if you click on the word itself, it will open up a page which will tell you what they're actually measuring. Okay, so here we can tell they're actually looking at the quality of the environment, air pollution, water quality. So they're looking at a whole range of things. So if we go back to the index. So what I've done is I've actually, if you reset this, when you first log in to Better Life Index, all of these are set forward a little bit. And this is how it appears. So we're looking for environment. So I'm going to put that environment right over the far right hand side. The flowers that pop up to the top are those countries that rank the environment as being better quality, or the way the environment is looked after is better. Now, to make it a little bit more extreme, you can actually take these tabs right back to the start, and that just makes it a little bit more obvious which ones are prioritising the environment. And you can see now that clearly Sweden is up there along the top, but there's a whole range of other countries. And what you'll need to do is look at that range of countries in relation to all the other information, so the climate graph, the population graph, whatever those aspects of your character were seen as important. So the Better Life Index is probably the best one. Gapminder does have information about the environment, but it tends to be almost too specific for what we want. So it talks about renewable water, forestry, emissions, disasters, agricultural land. And that's probably a little bit too much detail for what we need. We simply need to know that they either value the environment or they don't. Okay, along with the environment, another one which you won't necessarily find on Gapminder or OECD is looking at the actual topography of a country. Now, we've all done a topographic map. So let's look at a topographic map of, I tried to do Port Lincoln, I couldn't find one. Topographic map of Australia. And this will show areas that are hilly or flat. Now, this is particularly useful. There's a couple of people on the assignment that want places where they can go bike riding. So they would want predominantly flatland. I think there's another couple of people who like areas that are mountainous. So by looking at topographic maps, you can see where the more mountainous areas are, either by looking at the contour lines or by looking at the shading. So a map like this, which shows you where the main mountainous regions are. So that can help you work out the physical environment, the layout of the land, as it were. Okay, the next one on the list is looking at entertainment. Now, what have we got? We've got life satisfaction here, how happy they are. We've got community, which is sort of the social support networks, and work-life balance. They can all be involved in that sort of entertainment. Gapminder doesn't have anything really about entertainment, unless you find murder entertaining. Nope. So we need to go somewhere else. Probably the easiest one is to go, once you've actually chosen an area, so I would do, let's do Sydney. Oops, let's spell it right. Sydney, Australia, and then I'd be using words like Australia, like events. Putting a year in there helps. And you'll come up with a list of sort of what's on, things to do. So when you're talking about, if you have a character that wants to do specific events, you can include information from websites like this. And you don't necessarily have to write down everything that's on during the year. You might just pick a couple of months and say, well, during this month, there are all these sorts of events. So it's similar to what you did with your calendar assignment, but you don't have to go into the amount of detail that you've got there. And obviously, if your character likes certain events, then there are things like art, culture, food, wine, nature, beach, holidays, concerts, etc. that you can use. So that's something that you'll have to do a little bit of research, but looking for the tourist type sites and doing searches that include the word what's on or events or coming attractions, they're the sorts of words that are going to find you the information that you need. Okay, the next one was crime, because we've got a couple of people in that collection of people who either are okay with crime or a couple of people who aren't okay. So Gapminder is the best one for this one for finding crime. And if we go to society, we can actually, I know there's specifically one about murder with the elderly couple, so we can look up murders. Once again, go to the map, because this is showing total of number of murders. So for someone who doesn't want to be murdered, we're looking for the places with the smaller dots. And people who do want to be murdered, is this right? This doesn't look right. People who do want to be murdered, oh, it is too. I didn't think China and India were so dangerous. But people who are quite happy to be murdered can go to these countries here with the larger dots on them. It also means if you're looking at people who aren't concerned about their safety, then they can live in those areas with smaller dots. With larger dots, because they're not worried about that, or they could possibly protect themselves against it as well. And I think along with murders, you can compare it with things like war and peace, battle deaths as well, if they are particularly concerned about their safety. The OECD, the Better Life Index, we also have a safety tab, and this looks at murder and assault rates. So once again, if we click that up, now remembering that China and India were quite high, we should probably see China and India pop up the tops here somewhere too. Although they weren't looking, Poland, they weren't looking at assault rates. No, can't find China in there anywhere. Oh, and also remembering that the Better Life Index doesn't actually look at all the countries of the world. It only looks at the countries that belong to the OECD. So that's why China and India aren't on there. Okay, so Gapminder might end up being the best one for that. So that will give you the crime. Looking at health now. Now, there are stacks of statistics on Gapminder about the health of different places, and you can look at specific diseases and mental health and malaria and life expectancy and everything else. If you want to look for economic or money situations, so which countries are spending the most on health, then there is health economics here, but some of these there is no data for. I can't remember which ones they are. So if we look at total health spending per person, okay, so that gives us an indication about how much money is being spent per person on health. So that will give us some indication. The OECD Better Life Index does have a health rating on it as well. So that will be quite good for getting some general overviews about how highly health is rated in those countries. But if you want to get into the more detail about the specific health spending, the health economics is good. It doesn't have anything about hospitals, I don't think. Medical doctors, that can give you an indication. Countries that have more medical doctors tend to have better health. Oh, Cuba. So there's a whole range of different sources of information for the health one. Now the next one on my list is housing. I don't think there's anything in Gapminder about housing. No, I had a quick look. There's nothing in there about housing. There is some stuff about traffic and roads, but not actual houses. And even the OECD, there does have a housing satisfaction, but once again, it won't include all the countries, and it is quite general. So you can use it as one of your guides for your people. But the other thing that you can do is look up average price. Oops, let's try average house price Russia. Okay, so we can actually then get a bit of an idea about what the price is. But as we've already found with someone in the class, there's no point saying that a house in Russia costs, let's see, 2,000 rupee or whatever. What's the money in Russia called? Don't know. But that's not a good price history. No. Let's see if we can find average price Russia. Cost of living in Russia. So you need something to compare it with is what I'm getting at. So you might need to say, well, this is a price. Here we are. So we've got a bit of a price, cost of living. So we've got rent per month, which is $568. I want to say dollars, but I'm not sure. So I'd actually, oh, here we are. So you can actually get the currency in. I wonder if it's got Australian dollars. Oh, here we are. Okay, so this actually turns out to be a really good site because it already converts the money to Australian money. So we can then look at rent per month and find out that it's $731 a month Australian. So when you're looking at things like the price of housing, it's really good to have a comparison. So maybe get the average rental price of a house in Australia so that we can see whether it is actually cheaper or more expensive. Because I think a couple of the characters, I know one definitely has very low income, so you would be looking at housing that had a lower income. But just be aware that if it does have the money in anything but Australian, it doesn't have a converter like this, then you can always go to something called a currency converter. You might even have an app on your phone if you've ever been overseas, and you can actually just write in. One will come up on Google straight away. So you've got one Afghani to US dollar rate. Oh, that didn't work very well. Usually it shows up, but there are lots of, here we go. So one Afghani is equal to $0.016. And obviously converting to Australia is going to be the best way to do it. Okay, education was another criteria. There were a couple of people that wanted good education. Once again, Gapminder has the best statistics on this. It looks at a whole range of indicators. And when you're actually saying you chose this country because of its high education facilities, then you need to specify what you've actually looked at. So literacy is a really good one for looking at the education system in a country, and that's probably going to be the best one to look at. So particularly looking at, well, whether it's male or female, literacy rates for male and female tend to be quite similar. But we can see here a whole range of countries. Once again, we go to the map, which makes it a little bit easier to read. If they have a high literacy rate, then education tends to be valued in those countries more so than smaller literacy rates. So that's one way to check using the literacy rate. I don't think it actually, oh, there we go. We do have school enrolment. So obviously a high school enrolment indicates that a country values education. We can probably look at primary completion. So the number of kids who are actually completing primary school, remembering that school isn't actually compulsory in many countries. So the countries over here, we have countries where only 24% of the population are actually finishing primary school. So the countries over here, we've got a much higher rate of students finishing primary school. So there's a few different places you can look for education on here. Schooling costs, number of years in school, mean kind of means average. So the average years in school, or does mean total? I think it's the total years of school. We'll have to check with the maths teacher there. Now, the OECD, once again, has an indicator for education up here. But remembering, once again, that it doesn't have every country in the world. So we have Finland scoring the highest up here. And Mexico not doing so well down the bottom there. The last one is looking at poverty. So once again, if we go to Gapminder, there is a specific one that deals with, here we are, under economy. We've actually got poverty and inequality, so we can actually look at, the number of people in poverty. Now we can use that for a couple of the characters. There is one there who said he was quite poor. Oh, we have no data on that one. Okay. Let's look at poverty, the percentage of people below $2 a day. So you can look at people who already have very little money because they can probably survive in a country that has low poverty, but you can also use it to look at, there's one character, a girl I think, who wants to work in an area where people are underprivileged. So the percentage of people who earn below $2 a day, so these countries on this side are the countries where, well, here we've got almost 90% of the people survive on below $2 a day. 94% in Burundi, so these are all actually African countries that survive in extreme poverty. And then of course you've got your richer countries over the side here. And just out of interest, where's Australia? I think Australia is on there. Let's have a look at the map. Yep. So Australia is on there, but I can't find the amount that it's saying. Oh, that's right, because it's looking at remembering these maps look at the growth. There's been no change. So maybe the chart is going to be a better one to look at that. But there are some other indicators on there of poverty as well. Economy, so things like debt and trade, aid given. So for people who want to live in particularly rich countries or poor countries, that might be an indication. The only other thing which I think I've left off the list, the OECD it does have income. So the countries that are rated high, household income and financial wealth are at the top here, and obviously the lower ones. I've just realised the one I haven't looked at is technology, but I reckon we can probably find that under communication. Yep, here we go. So we've got personal computers, fixed line subscribers, cell phones. So let's look at broadband subscribers total. So that should give us some indication about internet use. And we can assume that if it's highly used, that it is readily available. So we have China over here, Japan, Germany, a few European countries, Italy, and then quite amazingly, or not amazingly, but not even surprisingly, but we have a whole range of countries that have very low internet, and we tend to think of the world as being sort of surrounded by the internet, but there are quite a few countries that have quite limited access to the internet. What else can we look at under communication? Internet. Oh, here we go. We have actually got internet users, so we can use that, and it's very similar to the last map as far as looking at the total of internet users. I haven't changed at all. So we can see there countries that are obviously high in internet. So what you end up with is a whole range of different maps and charts which show you what the statistics are for each country, and it's about matching up the best fit of those countries for your person. Now, I've just realised I've forgotten to do, when you're doing the climate, once you've actually found a location, if you search for a climate graph of that location, you'll come up with one of these. And it's a good idea to include that because that actually shows you that the person, or shows us that the person you've chosen who wants a temperate climate is actually getting a temperate climate. So the bars are rainfall and the line is the temperature. Okay? So keep that in mind when you're looking at the climate. Once you've actually decided, go back and actually get a climate graph for that country. Okay, that's about all. I think I've covered most aspects, but if there's anything else that I haven't covered, let me know and I can talk to you individually about that in class.